I know that some of you have been here already very early, and I think this is a great opportunity to lead in from the keynote speech that Robert just gave and continue and deepen the conversation, as Bob was saying when he was chairing the previous session. And so I have with me here Robert Kirkpatrick, who has just been introduced with the Global Pulse, and he's given us an extremely interesting and exciting presentation on what the big data can do for us. I have also with me Yemi, and I'll not try your last name, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make a mess of this. And Yemi is a person who uses actually this data and uses this data to support and help civil society hold governments accountable, or the government in Nigeria accountable. And so this is another way of how you can use data that's out there and use it for decision making. Some of you have been raising questions about how do we close that loop. And then we have Ken Chomitz. Ken Chomitz is a senior advisor in the office of the Independent Evaluation Group. That is my office. We are doing the independent evaluations of the World Bank Group. And he is one of our champions for using new technology in our evaluation work, and so he'll be speaking a little bit about how we are doing this and what we plan to do in the future. I wanted to start this panel with first giving Yemi and Ken the opportunity to speak a little bit about their work, because you've had the possibility to listen to Robert, what Global Pulse is doing. So each of them will give a very quick overview, 5 minutes over what angle they're coming from, and then we have a couple of questions that I'm going to pose to each of them to speak a little bit more, to stimulate and hopefully a discussion where we would like to invite you in the audience to pose your questions and follow up from some of the questions that were already raised in the beginning. So with that, Yemi, if you would like to start.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Enough is Enough started not as a formal organization. It was born out of about 2 years ago. There were a lot of things going on in Nigeria. And a group of young people basically just said, you know what, where's the outrage? Young Nigerians need to be very vocal about what's going on and make their voices heard. So we held a rally, March of 2010, to the National Assembly, basically stating the concerns of young Nigerians. So the picture of the rally, one of the lead guys confronting the military that was set to stop us. So it's basically a civic participation for young Nigerians, and it's leveraging, and the key real idea is to leverage technology to get young people involved in governance. The justification, very simply, 70% of Nigerians are below 30, 50% are between 18 and 35, and 65% of registered voters are between 18 and 35. Generally disenfranchised, not really active participants in the electoral process. And for the first time, I think, in last year's general elections, you had a lot of young people participating. Our tool of choice, social media, one, it's cheap, and it was easier for us to access based on the demographic of young people that were being vocal at the time. About 45.9 million internet users in Nigeria, 95 million active mobile phone lines, which Robert now says about up to 100 million now, earlier. Right now, actually, as of July, about 5 million Nigerians in Nigeria on Facebook. There are no, at least for us, we don't have stats for Twitter, but we estimate about 30% of that number are on Twitter. Just a glimpse of our celebrities that are on Facebook. So we have, the president has about 703,000 likes. One of the leading Nollywood actresses has 661. One of major pop icons has 284. Both of them are coalition members of Enough is Enough, so those are the kind of people we leverage on in terms of getting our message out. So RSVP, quite simply, was the campaign we coined. Register to vote, select credible candidates, vote on election days, and protect your votes. And the broad objective really is just driving better governance through increased citizen participation. Our focus areas are new media and technology, traditional media, and face-to-face forum. But for the purpose of this, I'll just focus on new media and technology. So last year, we developed a mobile phone application that basically allowed citizens to report what was happening at the polling units. For each person's voter identification card, it tells exactly what state you're in, what local government, what ward, and your exact polling unit. So if you download the mobile phone application, it ties your mobile phone number to your polling unit. So every time you send a message from your mobile phone, it knows exactly where you are and who you are, not by name, but who you are by location. So the idea was to allow citizens to report what was happening. So the data we collected included if the officials arrived on time, were materials available, did the voting process happen, were votes collated, were results announced, any incidents of violence, fraud, and you could also send in the results at the end when the results were announced. Sort of the user interface, so that's your polling unit number. So that's the state, your local government, your ward, and then your polling unit. And then this is when you download the data, the application. And then here you can say what election type are you interested in, and then you sort of drop down menu for all the other data, and you send it in as a text. So it costs you the cost of an SMS. The next phase of Revoter that we're working on now, instead of just highlighting elections, you can now send in data on corruption, electricity, which is a huge challenge in Nigeria, security and emergency relief, contact your National Assembly members, and if the organization has any petitions or surveys, you can also answer those from your mobile phone. One of the things we also did for the elections is what we call the Social Media Tracking Center. As far as we know, it was the first of its kind anywhere in the world, and it was since duplicated in, I believe, Liberia for the Liberia elections. And it's basically 9 volunteers, computers, a large screen, printer, and the mission was to track social media impact on elections in real time. So basically, every weekend there was an election, and people would gather in front of computers, and Georgia Institute of Technology helped us develop an application called Aggie. And Aggie just sort of trawled through the web, mentions of Nigeria elections, any sort of keywords we put in it, and they'll get flagged up, and the volunteers then will sort of categorize them differently. And these are some of the numbers. 157,000 SMS messages, almost 2,000 pictures, almost 300,000 comments on Twitter, and an estimated 70,000 people contributed to the content that was collected. This is a summary slide. So most of our information came from Twitter at 55%, Facebook at 6%, SMS at 33%, and sort of blogs and other things at 6%. So this is Aggie, and one of the very interesting things about it is when there was post-election violence after the presidential elections were announced, you would see some spikes in people talking about it. So apparently for that particular election, social media picked up the incidents of violence in the north before any other form of media. And the third thing we're working on is, this is from Kenya, but the prototype is being developed for Nigeria at the moment. It's called Mzalendo, which means testimony. Oh, not testimony. I forget what it means actually in Swahili, but it's this is for Kenya, so it's eye on the Kenyan Parliament, and basically looks like all the parliamentarians, and it allows you to rate them. It gives information about their contactability, and talks about the hands of the parents. So this gentleman, for example, has spoken, frequently speaks in Parliament 112 times in the last 6 months. So the idea is to give Kenyans an opportunity to track their legislators, find out what they're doing, and demand whatever it is from them based on what platforms they were elected on. So something like this also being developed by My Society for Nigeria. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.